Russia's collapsing air dominance. A new chapter in aerial warfare. Air superiority has long been seen as a prerequisite for victory in modern warfare. In nearly every major conflict of the last 30 years, whether it was Iraq, Afghanistan, or the Balkans, the side with control of the skies dominated the battlefield. That's what made Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022 so notable. By nearly every conventional measure, Russia should have been able to swiftly neutralize Ukrainian air defenses and gain air supremacy. And yet, over 2 years later, that hasn't happened. In fact, Russia's air power has deteriorated dramatically. What began as a campaign with the second largest air force on Earth has turned into a grinding war of attrition, where glide bombs, Cold War aircraft, and undertrained pilots have replaced precision strikes and air superiority. Here's how one of the world's most powerful air forces lost its edge, and what it means for the future of aerial warfare. Part 1. A crisis in pilot training. Let's start with the pilots. While NATO pilots typically log between 180 and 240 flight hours per year, Russian pilots average less than 100, sometimes as low as 60 hours annually. That means fewer repetitions, fewer combat drills, and a weaker instinct for handling real-world threats. When the war in Ukraine intensified, Russia's problem only got worse. Veteran pilots were lost in combat, and the training pipeline couldn't keep up. According to Ukrainian military intelligence, the Russian Air Force shortened its training program from 5 years to under 2. Even more alarmingly, many pilots now spend less time in the air and more time in simulators or classroom theory. The result? A generation of pilots who are barely trained, flying high-risk missions with limited experience, and often paying the price with their lives. Part 2. Glide bombs. A workaround, not a solution. Faced with rising losses and the growing danger of Ukraine's air defenses, Russia adopted a new strategy: standoff munitions, specifically glide bombs. These aren't high-tech weapons. They're Soviet-era dumb bombs fitted with inexpensive GPS modules and pop-out wings. Once released, they glide toward their target from a safe distance, typically 30 to 50 kilometers away, allowing Russian jets to stay out of range of Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles. In theory, it's a cost-effective solution. In practice, it's a blunt instrument. Glide bombs are far less accurate than Western precision-guided munitions. Their circular error probability, the distance within which 50% of bombs are expected to land, can range from 30 to 100 meters or more. That's a massive radius when you're aiming at a bunker or a bridge. To compensate, Russia increased its volume. By 2024, it was launching over 100 glide bombs per day across the front lines. This saturation strategy, quantity over precision, but despite the scale, it hasn't delivered meaningful strategic gains. In fact, at the current rate of advance, it would take Russia over a century to occupy the rest of Ukraine using this method. Part 3. Cold War jets reborn. Another sign of Russia's dwindling aerial advantage, its reliance on aircraft from a bygone era. As newer aircraft were lost or sidelined by maintenance issues, Russia began pulling dozens of old jets from storage. MiG-29s, Su-24s, and other Cold War models, many of which had been mothballed for decades, were rapidly refurbished and sent into combat. These aircraft are less capable, less survivable, and lack modern targeting systems. But they're functional, and they can carry glide bombs. Even Russia's airborne early warning systems have taken a step backward. The A-50 Mainstay, a Soviet-era radar plane designed in the 1970s, is back in production. Despite being outdated, it's built entirely with Russian components, making it immune to Western sanctions. The A-50 is less effective than NATO's AWACS platforms, but in today's sanctions environment, good enough is now Russia's new standard. This shift highlights a stark reality. Russia's aviation industry is no longer innovating, it's recycling. Part 4. Ukraine's Air Force. Underdog, not outmatched. On paper, Ukraine should have been overwhelmed in the skies. Its air force was smaller, older, and outnumbered. But 2 years into the war, Ukraine's pilots are still flying and fighting back. Since the invasion, Ukraine has received dozens of Western jets, including F-16s from NATO countries and Mirage 2000s from France. These aircraft bring better radar, advanced munitions, and longer range. But they're not magic bullets. Many were delivered in used condition, and pilot training has been accelerated to meet wartime urgency. Normally, mastering an F-16 takes over a year of dedicated training. Ukrainian pilots are doing it in a few months. That's a heroic effort, but it limits how well they can use the jets in complex missions. Maintenance is another bottleneck. Older aircraft flying high sortie rates in wartime conditions are difficult to keep airworthy. Without steady access to spare parts and dedicated hangars, Ukraine's air fleet faces wear and tear at an unsustainable pace. Still, Ukraine has shown adaptability. Its pilots have pioneered low-altitude tactics to dodge radar and executed several successful strikes deep inside Russian territory. These actions demonstrate not just survival, but innovation. Part 5. A new model for air power. Perhaps the biggest surprise of this war is what hasn't happened. Russia has failed to achieve air superiority. More than 2 years in, it still cannot fly safely over most of Ukraine. That failure has enormous implications. For decades, Western doctrine assumed that air superiority was essential for winning ground battles. But Ukraine has held off a much larger and better equipped air force, using a dense, multi-layered air defense system. From legacy systems like the S-300 to mobile Buk platforms and portable man-pads, Ukraine's integrated air defenses have proven highly effective, even against supersonic jets and cruise missiles. Russia's air force, forced to operate from distance, is limited in its ability to support ground troops, target logistics hubs, or shape the battlefield from above. The result is a stalemate in the skies, one that would have seemed unthinkable just a few years ago. This isn't just about Ukraine. It's a lesson for every military that has taken air dominance for granted. The US, for instance, hasn't fought a major war against a peer adversary in decades. But if modern air defenses can blunt even Russia's air force, then NATO planners will need to rethink their assumptions. The war in Ukraine shows us that control of the skies is no longer a guarantee. It must be earned, and even then, it may be limited, temporary, or contested. Part 6. Where air combat is headed next. So what does the future look like? We're entering an era where manned fighters are more vulnerable than ever. Dense air defense networks, mobile SAMs, and drone surveillance are making it harder to fly safely over contested terrain. That means the air forces of tomorrow will look different from the ones we grew up with. Standoff weapons, like glide bombs and cruise missiles, will play a larger role. Unmanned systems, like drones and loitering munitions, will increasingly replace manned strike missions. Electronic warfare and cyber tools will become central to suppressing enemy air defenses. And agile, dispersed tactics will replace large, visible air campaigns. Ironically, Russia's embrace of glide bombs may be a preview of this shift. They're crude, inaccurate, and improvised, but they allow strikes without risking pilots. In a war of attrition, that counts for something. In the long run, however, brute force tactics won't be enough. The side that adapts first, whether through drones, stealth, or smarter doctrine, will be the one that survives. Conclusion: a sky no longer dominated. Russia entered the war with the second largest air force on Earth. Today, it relies on Cold War jets, undertrained pilots, and GPS-modified gravity bombs to stay in the fight. Ukraine, though outgunned, has defied expectations with adaptability, Western aid, and layered air defenses. And the skies over Eastern Europe remain contested, not dominated. For the first time in a generation, the myth of air supremacy is being rewritten in real time. This isn't just a Ukrainian story, it's a global one.